Okay, out of respect for everyone's time, I think I'm going to get started with this. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. I'm Dan Bursick. I'm from Planning and Development Services. I am a principal planner. I work on code amendments. I related to this. I had worked previously on our medical marijuana ordinance and working on the sunset date a couple years ago. We also have a few people from the city as well, staff from our department. So we have Corin Manning, who's our planning administrator for Planning and Development Services. We have Samuel Rogers, who is a planner with Planning and Development Services as well. And then Natalia from the mayor's office as well is here. So thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you taking the time to come to our public meeting here. So this is the agenda for today. I just wanted to start off by letting you know there's a few kind of just things to go over as far as communication goes. Sometimes virtual meetings are a little difficult as far as that goes. So there's a few different ways to communicate, ask questions, and comment. One of which is at the bottom of this page, we have this form, and I'm going to put this in the I'm going to put this link in our chat. And if you wanted to comment or make any comments or send us comments, you're welcome to go to that link and you can fill it out. You're not required to put your name or your phone number or anything, but we do have spaces for you to do that. So that's one way to comment. Additionally, if we're going through, I think a lot of times it's best to wait till the end. But if you do have a comment or you would like to speak or something of that sort, feel free to use either the chat function to either request to speak or to make a comment, or you can use the hand raise feature, which is at the top of your screen. And you can kind of click on where it says raise hand for that. Just remember, everyone can see the chat, so the chat's kind of, just be respectful of each other and things of that sort, and related to that. So we really do appreciate it, and look forward to having this discussion. So for the agenda today, we're going to start off just a little bit of a background on marijuana regulations. Obviously, those are medical marijuana regulations and what we've had in place since 2010. We're going to talk a little bit about the Arizona Smart and Safe Act, which was recently passed, what that means, and really, I mean, that's the impetus for why we're here. We'll talk a little bit about what our current regulations are. So kind of what we're doing in Tucson, what are those regulations, looking at how they compare to other communities. And then eventually get to some potential changes in Tucson zoning code, and then have that discussion related to it. So with that, we'll kind of start off here and talk a little bit about some of the marijuana regulations in Tucson. So, back in 2010, November 2nd, we had the first kind of proposition related to marijuana that passed. It was for medical marijuana. And the voters approved it, legalizing the use of medical marijuana in Arizona. Shortly after, we did pass we had mayor and council adopted zoning regulations related to that. Those were primarily based off of a model ordinance that was developed by the Arizona League of Cities, along with some changes related that we heard from comments from the community. Because it was kind of based off of that model ordinance, we've gone back several times and made changes to make it more reflective of really Tucson and Tucson's community. So in 2014, mayor and council adopted revisions and regulations regarding the size limit for offsite cultivation locations in industrial I-1 and I-2 zones. The thought process back there was that the manufacturing and the cultivation made sense to be in industrial zones. So we removed the size limit for that to allow for those to move those operations kind of away from the residential areas to where they're more appropriate. In 2016, mayor and council adopted revisions, things related to cap on dispensaries, which has since been removed, increasing the permitted size of the cultivation locations and the dispensaries from 3,000 to 4,000 in the C2 and C3 zones. And then adjusting the setback for existing dispensaries to be in conformance with Arizona Department of Health Services standards. So we had a larger setback for those, but we had businesses that would like to expand, but they weren't able to because they didn't meet that actual setback. One second, let's see if we have a few people. I'm going to actually mute you. If you are on your phone, if you'd like to mute or unmute, I will say you can use star D. I know it's a little counterintuitive, not particularly intuitive, but there we go. Excellent. All right. So, and then in 2019, Mayor and Council voted 7-0 to remove the sunset date regarding medical marijuana. And then we approved, Mayor and Council approved a couple amendments related to odor mitigation. So previously we didn't have odor mitigation in our code. We added in regulations related to that in 2019. And then we made some adjustments to the lobby size and the requirements related to that. Okay. So part of the reason why we're coming back and looking at the code, there's a few of them. One of them's, you know, we've had issues related to social distancing, COVID, and making sure that we have a safe atmosphere for our medical marijuana patients. But additionally, it's because of the Proposition 207, the Arizona Smart and Safe Act that has recently been passed. So in the November election, the Arizona Smart and Safe Act passed 60% to about 39.97, so about 40%, by over 600,000 votes. I think that number was a little higher in Pima County. It was around 63.5% or something of that sort. So passed by a pretty good margin. Some of the key items related to Proposition 207, it does allow for limited marijuana possession, use, and cultivation by adults that are 21 and older. Personal possession of 6 marijuana plants for a single person household, or 12 marijuana plants for a household of 2 or more. So it allows for you to grow your own personal plants on your property. There are some kind of technicalities related to licenses. So what it's basically doing is it's giving a preference to new licenses will be given to existing medical marijuana dispensaries. So and from conversations we've had with the marijuana industry, the medical marijuana industry, nearly all of the licenses and new licenses for adult use will be taken up by those marijuana dispensaries, unless they were in violation of some sort of law or rule. They would be basically granted that. The Arizona Department of Health Services is right now going through and doing that, and they will be issuing those in the coming months. There are some additional licenses that will be distributed related to this, and those are it's 26 additional licenses. They're based on basically they're going to be giving them to underserved areas, or they would be giving them to communities that are disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of previous marijuana laws. They call it this kind of social equity license. They haven't come up with the rules for the social equity license on those yet, but the ones that will be going to the underserved areas wouldn't really impact here. Basically, they're going to counties that have either 1 or 2 dispensaries currently, and because we have 11 dispensaries in the city of Tucson and several more within the rest of Pima County, it wouldn't really affect us. It's potentially they could move to Tucson at some point, but it isn't really that many when you think about the totality of licenses in the state. There are working right now on additional regulations and laws that are set up by Arizona Department of Health Services. They're the ones who created the laws for the medical marijuana ordinance, and when Prop 203 passed back in 2010. So they're making those. They're going to be going through and making those laws. They need to have them completed by April 5th, 2021. So pretty quickly, we'll be coming up. We'll have those laws. There's drafts of those that are located on their website right now. They had a draft that first draft came out in December. Second draft came out like a week or 2 ago. If you're interested, it's worth looking through. There's some pretty interesting things in there. It's not a lot of items related to zoning, which is kind of what we're talking about this evening. But it does have a lot of regulations related to this. And then one of the more interesting things on the Prop 207 Proposition 207 Act essentially was that the new municipal adult use regulations shall not be more restrictive than current medical marijuana regulations. And this is a pretty key one. So kind of what we're doing and what I see other communities have done is basically you start with the medical marijuana regulations and then kind of work from there and see what is appropriate for your community. And that's kind of what we're doing. So steps taken to date, we've been working on this a little bit, kind of going to mayor and council and doing some research on it. Started really back in September 9th. We held a study session with mayor and council. They provided initial guidance on temporary measures to address those COVID-related issues that I was talking about previously. And then they did give us some guidance on to start the process for in case it were to pass in November. We did hold a stakeholder meeting where we brought in business owners and people that were running the dispensaries to get an understanding of really what those COVID-related issues are with social distancing, and then tried to work with them to figure out ways that we could help to increase their ability to have social distancing, especially for their immunocompromised patients. From there, we went back to our mayor and council for a study session. We got some additional guidance on those temporary measures, and then they gave us further direction on the more permanent changes for the code related to Proposition 207, because at that point it had already, I don't think the results were certified, but it had passed, and it had passed by a significant margin, or significant enough margin to understand that this would be becoming law. And then after that, we went back and had to hold a second stakeholder meeting to kind of let the dispensary owners and the business owners understand kind of what we had kind of the conclusion or so of what we had come up with temporary measures for the COVID-related issues, and then talk to them a bit about the upcoming adult use and how they saw it affecting their business models. So go over a little bit about the COVID-related temporary measures. So we currently allow for the kind of top three, which allow for social distancing. So things like curbside pickup and delivery, home delivery is allowed under our code, and then expanded lobby size. So we don't have a limit on how lobby size could be. It's limited by the total size, which is 4,000 square feet of the dispensary right now, but they are allowed to make the lobby as large as they would like. We also worked with our city attorney to come up with a couple temporary measures that may be allowed by a site-by-site basis. So let's say you have a business and you have an unused space next door, or you are only using 4,000 square feet of a 6,000 square foot building. You could potentially utilize that extra space for an expanded lobby for people to wait and to help them to social distance. And then we talked a bit about temporary utilization of existing drive-throughs. So there was one that I know of. There may have been another one of an existing facility that had a built-in drive-through, was already there. So allowing for them to utilize that drive-through on a temporary basis while they through the COVID pandemic to kind of help with that social distancing. So at that meeting, when we talked about all the COVID-related issues and things of that sort, we also talked a bit and got a little bit of direction from mayor and council on what they would like to see in when we're dealing with the more permanent kind of zoning code changes that we're dealing with now. So at the September 9th, 2020 mayor and council study session, this is kind of what they had told us they would like to see. To begin the process of reviewing the UDC, engage stakeholders, and otherwise in the event that adult choice marijuana ballot measure is approved by voters. So this was looking forward. It's saying, it was polling at a certain level. They had a feeling that it would be passed, but it hadn't passed at that point. So then when we went back in November, it had passed by that point. And they directed us really to, these are kind of more specific. These are kind of more specific items related to it. One is expanding the total allowed dispensary size due to additional concerns about social distancing, COVID-19, and then increased traffic related to Prop 207. And then some of the comments that kind of came out of that were staff should review what is happening in the Phoenix area as a guide, see what they're doing up there. And then there were comments related to kind of, there's Flagstaff over here that has an unlimited dispensary size, and then there's places like Chandler and Gilbert that have, like 2,000, 2,500 square foot dispensary size. So work to kind of try to find something in the middle, essentially. So, I think you'll see some of the things that we've looked at kind of follow that guidance is what we're looking at here. So before we get into kind of what we're looking at as far as potential changes to the code, I just wanted to present kind of what we're looking at with medical marijuana regulations in the rest of the state. Now, these are most likely going to change. Well, I know a lot of other communities are currently working on making changes to their zoning code. But this will give you an understanding really of kind of where we're at in the city of Tucson compared to the rest of the state, essentially. So, and a lot of these are based on, really community values and have been developed over time. But, in the city of Tucson, we do allow for our dispensaries to be in our C2 and C3 zones, which are more intense commercial zones. And we allow for up to 4,000 square feet for the dispensary to operate. When you look at other communities, it's really kind of all over the board. There's places that are smaller, like Mesa and Oro Valley, with 2,000, 2,500. But places like Glendale are at 6,000. Like I had said before, Flagstaff, Scottsdale, Surprise, Peoria, a lot of other communities have no size limit whatsoever on their dispensary sizes. So it's really it could be it's a lot of different things. One thing that was kind of interesting, and then we've been talking a bit, Mayor and Council talked a bit about the drive-throughs and looking into potentially allowing for drive-throughs, is that at least currently, I was unable to find another municipality that does currently allow for drive-throughs for marijuana dispensaries. I think this was initially a concern about safety and things related to that. It is not restricted by the state by any means, but I haven't seen, other than some temporary measures that I've heard of up in the Valley area, there aren't any permanent regulations that allow for drive-throughs for dispensaries. So with that, I'll talk a little bit about what other cities are doing related to adult use. Several communities have passed ordinance to restrict adult use marijuana, and I've been working with that. So there are places like Gilbert that has prohibited adult use dispensaries in their city. There are a lot more that are just limiting them to dual use facilities. So they basically said that you can't have a standalone adult use dispensary. I will say that just related to Prop 207, there are very few standalone adult use licenses that would be issued. It'd be those 26 essentially. And every dual use license is required to operate both facilities. So every medical license that is applying for an adult use is required to operate those together essentially for it. Phoenix did, in anticipation of adult use and related to COVID issues, they did go through and expanded their dispensary size. So they had the dispensary size of 2,000 square feet up until July. And then in July, they expanded their dispensary size from 2,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet for that in anticipation. I believe they're going to go back and actually make additional changes, but that was kind of anticipating what was coming up in the future. And then in conversations that I've had with others and seen online, places like Tempe, places even like Page, I spoke to the director of the planning department in Page. Really what the consensus has been and what I've seen is that they're really starting with those medical regulations and then working through the process and making the needed adjustments for adult use. So based on kind of our analysis internally and talking to stakeholders, talking to mayor and council, there are several items that we feel that may need change, and there may be other ones as well. And feel free to comment, let us know on other things that you feel that we may have missed here. But the items that we have set up to discuss with you are related to definitions. So as you change from medical to adult use, we have a lot of references to just medical marijuana. Those need to be updated and make sure that we have the correct references, the correct definitions in there. So things like dispensaries, offsite cultivation, et cetera. There's a new land use that comes along with this called that's basically manufacturing and standalone manufacturing. Dispensary size, this is going to be the big one just because with more traffic and more people coming, and then also with COVID related issues, the dispensary size that we currently have in the city of Tucson, 4,000 square feet, especially there has been a lot of growth, is something that will likely need to be addressed. Drive-throughs, as we talked about previously, and then odor mitigation, which is it has been a pretty big topic of late. So with that, this is just kind of almost procedural in a lot of ways, but again, medical marijuana dispensary, in our code, it currently says, a medical marijuana dispensary shall have the same meaning as nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary. This is one of those things where we would have to go in and change that reference, or we would add in a reference specifically to adult use. Interestingly enough, if you look at the regulations that the draft regulations that have come out from the Arizona Department of Health Services, and I believe Prop 207, is that they actually, for the adult use definition for dispensaries, they actually reference the medical marijuana one too. So it's basically the same thing, but we would just have to update those references. The offsite dispensary or dispensary offsite cultivation location, I think the idea here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it on the next slide as well, is just the fact that currently manufacturing is allowed within that. Even a standalone manufacturing would be allowed under that land use, and but it isn't specifically addressed in our definition. So either a secondary definition for manufacturing and standalone manufacturing, or at least including it in this, and then again, changing some of those references that refer just to medical marijuana instead of medical and adult use related to those. As I had spoken about previously, the manufacturing and standalone manufacturing, it's currently allowed as an accessory use to our dispensary land use, but it's also allowed as an offsite cultivation land use. So you could do a standalone manufacturing in our industrial zones as an offsite cultivation land use. It's part of that. One thing that has come up, so one is that it's not very clear, as I spoke about earlier, but it doesn't allow for a lot of flexibility for manufacturing at dispensaries. One of the things that came up in our meeting yesterday is just potentially allowing for manufacturing in the commercial zones for this, instead of just it being an accessory use. I think this is something to discuss. It definitely departs from how we've typically done things in our code. If you look at our code in our commercial zones, we do allow for manufacturing, but only as an accessory use to other uses. We don't specifically call out like a standalone manufacturing use within our commercial districts. But I think it was brought up, and I think it is something worthy of discussion. But that is at least from typically how we've dealt with manufacturing in the city. Industrial is generally in our industrial zones. Even light manufacturing would be in our industrial zones. And then one other thing that did come up is just the fact that the potential for allowing for additional amount of space for manufacturing in those dispensaries. But that generally will be hopefully addressed through the size of the dispensary related to that. So dispensary size, I think this is probably going to be the biggest one and have the biggest impact. So current regulations for the city of Tucson are we have a limit of 4,000 square feet total floor area. Additionally, and this came up in our conversation yesterday, is that we also have a limit of 500 square feet of total space for secure storage area. And both of those, and then the waiting area must be a minimum 25% of total sales floor area. The waiting area, I don't see that as being necessarily an issue, and I think that it kind of makes sense. However, the 4,000 square feet and the 500 square feet, especially kind of related to COVID, but also with the fact that we anticipate doubling, maybe tripling of the amount of customers and people coming to these facilities. Not to mention the fact that a lot of them will likely have a portion of their building for adult use and a portion of their building for medical. It appears to need a change. And the concern about spacing issues, there's also concern about, of people, if you don't have enough room inside, then people lining up outside and things of that sort, and the potential issues that it could create related to that. The size limit is a little arbitrary sometimes. We're anticipating at least a doubling. I think the easiest thing for us when we went through and discussed this internally was just, a straight up just doubling the size for the time being from 4,000 to 8,000 square feet. We thought also about potentially allowing for 4,000 square feet for the adult use, 4,000 square feet for a medical license, and then if you had both together, you could combine them and use them any way you wanted to. It's a little complex, and we're trying to get away from needless complexity in our code. So doubling seemed to be about right, but we do want to get your input on this and how you feel about it and what impacts it may be. Maybe it's not 8,000, maybe it's 10,000. There are other communities that have unlimited size, and maybe you just let the market determine what that is. But we do want to get your feedback on that and how you feel about that and what you feel is appropriate related to that. Okay. Related to drive-throughs, so drive-throughs are currently prohibited for medical marijuana dispensaries. This is one of those interesting things where typically in the C2 and C3 zone, we allow for drive-throughs for businesses. The only actual land use that we have in our code that specifically prohibits for C2 and C3 zones is for the medical marijuana dispensaries. This was something that was brought up by mayor and council for us to look into. I think that it's a possibility to allow for this, especially considering in C2 and C3 zones, we would basically be being consistent with the rest of our code. But we are looking for feedback on this as well. One of the things that did come up yesterday as well is the fact that, and I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work, but the new code, the new bill, the Proposition 207, restricts the delivery and restricts curbside delivery for the first, I think it's like 2 years until 2013 or 2023. I'm 10 years off, sorry. Until 2023. But it doesn't restrict drive-through. So it's potential that you could have something functioning similarly to what we have now with curbside delivery and delivery, but through the drive-through for those businesses. So that's something that, again, we are looking into. A lot of this stuff we plan on, bringing to the Planning Commission in a couple weeks. So again, your feedback on this is important related to that. And then the final one is related to odor mitigation. This one's a really difficult one. So we didn't have any odor mitigation prior to 2019. Prior to that, at least initially, we didn't really require it. We had been adding it for a couple years as a zoning condition when people would come in for their site approval. It was for their zoning compliance letter, essentially, and we would add a zoning condition saying they must have odor mitigation or submit an odor mitigation plan. In the last effort, we went through and created kind of a regulation related to this. The goal here was to find something that had enough of a requirement to give you direction on what to do, but not enough to not so specific to make it so it wasn't effective. So part of the problem with odor mitigation is just the fact that every facility is unique. and odor needs to be dealt with in a kind of site-by-site basis compared to something else where it says, like you have a 10-foot setback or something of that sort. So what we've done with this is we do require an odor mitigation plan that adheres to these regulations. However, we've had a hard time with the enforcement of this. So just having an odor mitigation plan doesn't necessarily mean that it'll work, or that there's really a recourse for an ineffective system. This has been a problem in other communities, so I've done a bit of research recently on this, and it looks like several communities who either had very kind of loose odor mitigation restrictions, or didn't have any at all, have actually gone through, especially in California and Colorado, where they've recently legalized, have gone through and made changes that try to be a little more specific, or at least address the issue related to enforcement. So some of the potential changes that we are looking at here is really this idea that add specificity and what needs should be included in this odor mitigation plan. So have it a little more standardized than we currently have it. And kind of some of the examples of this would be, instead of what we have here, just saying specifically you need operational processes and a maintenance plan that's included, activities, staff training schedules, things of that sort that would be required to be included in it, instead of being a little more kind of loose as far as, which is typically what has been done in the past. Other municipalities, such as Palm Springs, has taken what they call a zero tolerance stance. And then they've actually added in procedures on how to deal with complaints. And I think something kind of in between or something similar to this might not be a bad idea. Looking at, inspection for adherence to plan and plan effectiveness, if there is a complaint, or and they even went so far to say that, the operator has a certain amount of time to respond to deficiencies. So in their case, it was 7 days. I've seen other municipalities that have 30 days or things of that sort. So creating some sort of mechanism that shows how to deal with complaints, because as it is now, it's very difficult because it is ephemeral. And we don't have like a regulation on where the odor must be mitigated by. So is it mitigated to the property line? Is it mitigated to the, property 1,000 feet away, that type of thing. So I think a little more specificity into how to deal with those complaints would go a long ways. So that was the final one. So with that, I'll talk a little bit about next steps, and I'll open it up for questions and comments and things of that sort from everyone here. There's a pretty quick timeline on this, just because, as you saw, there should be awarding their licenses to the adult use licenses to the medical facilities within the next 2 or 3 months. It could be even sooner. And then they have to have all their laws in place and rules in place by April 5th. So we're shooting to try to get this done, and the changes completed before April 5th. So the next couple of weeks, we're going to integrate those comments and develop a formal proposal based on what we had presented here and your comments and things that we've heard. January 27th, we're looking to do a Planning Commission study session. We'll go to the Planning Commission, present similar stuff to what we have here with more specificity based on what we've talked about. From there, should they set it for a public hearing, we're looking to do a public hearing in February 17th with the Planning Commission. And then we're looking at a tentative date for a mayor and council public hearing on March 23rd, 2021. There's a lot of notice requirements and things related to this. That's why things take so long a lot of times for these changes. But that's kind of what we're looking at moving forward. And with that, I think I'm gonna open this up to questions from everyone. I think we have someone. Oh, it looks like in our chat, if anybody wants, Mo has put in a link to the Arizona Department of Health Services local jurisdiction zoning approval. Mo, you have your hand up if you'd like to speak.
I think I was on mute as I was talking.
Yeah, I thought maybe my speaker wasn't working. No, you were on mute.
No, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I apologize. So I think what happened is between yesterday's meeting and today, Department of Health Services posted this document on their website, and what it is that all of us dispensaries in the state who want to convert to dual use have to have this form signed by somebody, from PDSD or whoever else throughout the state before March 9th. Otherwise, we won't be able to convert to dual use permanently or to adult use. So I'm just saying, like, whatever you guys choose to just do, maybe the third option, because you'll still be in the process of figuring it out. There's 4 different check boxes that somebody from planning and development could pick while, when we bring this in, but we'll have to get these filled, probably this month, to be honest, because I know of one Flagstaff dispensary that's applying on January 19th. I know Scottsdale's doing the same. So this form alone's on the fast track.
Okay, thank you, Mo. Yeah, that's and I think similar to other municipalities that haven't necessarily completed their changes, we'll follow suit and do something probably similar to them as well. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything related to kind of the presentation? It's like Claire Levenberg has her hand up.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for taking my question. So I get nervous about the square footage allotment for secured space, specifically if it's included in the square footage of the dispensary. As you know, we're in medical right now, and the 500 square feet is getting to be very kind of difficult to work with. And then going into rec, the only reason why I'm bringing this up right now is we're following the medical regulations for testing, and they don't have the recreational regulations for testing right now currently. So currently, with there only being less than, I want to say 7 or 8 certified labs in the state of Arizona, a lot of us producers have had to kind of produce at a mass amount in order to accommodate the kind of slower test results that are coming out. And I just get nervous that 500 square feet for secured space is not nearly enough for medical right now. And I get worried with rec coming in, and I just don't even know if doubling it is going to work. But I do think at least doubling that would be a lot more reasonable to work with. Or leaving it, not as a requirement or a maximum, maybe as a minimum.
Excellent. Yeah, no, thanks, Claire. When I was looking at the code and I was looking at the 4,000 square feet and I was looking at potential issues, I noticed the 500 square feet for secured storage. And I don't know if it was a security issue and that was the reason why it was initially put into the code. But yeah, no, that definitely seemed like something that would cause problems moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Adriana?
Yeah, hi, thank you for taking my question. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Claire was saying with this storage. I think, moving towards serving recreational customers alongside medicinal patients, we're certainly going to need more storage for that reason. But also, recently there have been some changes with the rules, and specifically R917-317. 0.01 listed in there, it states that we have to separate the tested versus non-tested inventory, so that the medical marijuana products that have been tested are stored in a location away from the products that have been tested. So with that being said, I think right now we've implemented those changes, but I think moving forward, we're definitely going to need to see more space to accommodate that as well. And then also, the 8,000 square feet seems to be reasonable. However, I don't think we should be counting the space for our waiting areas, our restrooms, or the storage facilities as a part of that total 8,000 square feet.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aria. That's helpful. Bill?
Hi, thank you. How would new investors be made aware of the locations that were underserved or disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of previous laws as these licenses open up?
Unfortunately, Bill, I'm not entirely sure. I believe the state is currently working on the rules related to that and how that works. So that again, that's going to be through the state on how those are distributed, and then they're currently working on those rules. So I'm not entirely sure, but I would say I pay attention to what they're doing as far as creating those rules at the state level.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay. Anybody else? Mo.
I was actually gonna talk about, like Park Industrial, the PI zone. I noticed that only I-1 and I-2 have been allowed, and then there's apparently a PI zone as well as some others. So I guess in terms of, taking some more of these mixed-use industrial type areas and allowing them into the manufacturing or, cultivation, that might help everybody out a little bit. I'm not sure. I understand the odor problem. I get it. And then, how do you solve that? So there's also potentially agriculture zones. I know that you're a city and you have urban agricultural zones, but maybe look at those and see if it makes sense. I'm not familiar enough with, what other codes are out there in terms of industrial besides I-1 and I-2. But I know when we're looking at some properties, PI came up, a very attractive property, but it's not eligible because of the code. So.
Okay, thanks, Mo. That's a good thing to look into. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Jamal has his hand up. Jamal, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if, just for clarification, was I correct in hearing that there's only 11 licenses that are currently within the city of Tucson, and that I hear you correctly in stating that it could possibly grow due to the 26 that are allowed. Could you maybe speak to that a little bit more, please?
Yeah. So currently there's a pretty set amount of licenses that we have as far as medical. I believe it's 11 in the city. I'd have to go and check, but it's been pretty stable for a bit. And then what's been passed is that there's going to be 26 additional licenses for the entire state. A portion of those are going to go to underserved areas, which is not Pima County. It would be counties that have either one or two dispensaries currently, and we have more than that. And then the other ones are going to be those kind of social equity licenses. There's going to be 26 total for the entire state. So again, I'm not entirely sure how many would actually be awarded to the city of Tucson or this area, but it's possible that we could get a couple here. But that's essentially how that works. And again, those rules are still being drafted, and that would be up to the state.
And just to follow up real quick, you said in the city of Tucson there is approximately 11. I don't want to hold you to anything, but do you happen to know how many are in the county, or would that be a different number altogether as far as dispensaries?
I'd have to go and take a look and see how many. There aren't many. There aren't many in unincorporated Pima County. I believe Marana has one or two. I'd have to take a look and see what the total county number is. But there are definitely other ones. I believe there's one in Sahuarita as well. There are other ones in the county. Oh, I think there's a comment. Hold on. Sorry, I should have heard this. Okay, we have a few comments here. So Lee, hi Dan, dispensaries have been limited to 4,000 square feet. The new proposed limit is 8,000 square feet. Why the change to 8,000 and not 6,000, 10,000 or another size? So ultimately, this is kind of, again, I think I had brought this up previously, is that it was kind of easiest to say, you know, we're going from the adult use to the medical use to kind of just double it. Again, these numbers are kind of arbitrary, so we do want to get we do want to get your feedback on this and what you feel is appropriate. Again, it could be 10,000, it could be something else, but that's kind of how we landed on 8,000 essentially. Thank you. Okay, Mo clarified 0 in Pima County, unincorporated. Thanks, Mo. And then Linda Morales clarified 2 in Marana. Zoning restricts to only 2 unless population grows, 1 in Sahuarita. Thank you for the clarification on the Pima County stuff. Excellent. All right, and then I think we have Margie who has her hand up.
Thank you. So I was wondering, is this going to be the only opportunity that we as citizens are going to be able to ask questions if we can't think of anything right now?
So Margie, feel free to fill out a comment card if you'd like, the form that I have there. I'm more than happy to meet with you to discuss further if you'd like to. You can shoot me an email, give me a call. And then additionally, we are going to be going to the Planning Commission for a study session, and then we'll have public hearings with both the Planning Commission and Mayor and Council after that.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Okay. So would anybody else like to speak or have any comments? Excellent. Well, I guess with that, I will thank you so much for coming in and joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. I'm going to put the link up again for the form here. Just so if you do have time to fill out the form, it'd be great. We really are looking for your feedback on this. Additionally, I'm going to follow up with an email to everyone with the PowerPoint presentation. You can have those have the slides for yourself, and then we'll be posting all these materials online for you. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a very nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you again for doing this.
Daniel, can you help me out a little bit? I'm trying to get out of this meeting, but I can't find the button how to get out.
Oh, there should be a red button that says leave. And it's in different places sometimes, but it hopefully is in your upper right-hand corner.